So we own a Nobo 19.5. I think we got it in 2020, and it was pre-wired for Go Power. This is the actual controller already installed. There was basically just a sticker there that said wires are located behind this cutout, so you just use that as a template. And I've already got everything hooked up, and I'm going to show you the basics of what I went through, just because some of the videos were hard to follow and I didn't get everything I needed, so I just kind of had to do trial and error until I got mine right. So here we are on our roof. That's part of the roof rack that was already built in. It came on the Nobo, and they've got it all factory sealed into the roof, and so I decided to just go ahead and use that. I just drilled the Z brackets directly into there. Just used a little metal tapping bit and mounted the brackets directly onto the roof rack. That saves me from having to void the roof warranty and actually, screwing through there. Though it's pretty easy if you just have the Dicor lap sealant. From there are the wires. There's a little extra, so I just zip tied it to kind of keep them in place so they're not flapping around. And then I got an extension because it was about 6 to 7 feet to run over to the pre-wired power inlets. I forget what they call that thing. There's a certain name for that little plug and play where you tie the solar into. I grabbed some roof tape just to keep the wires in place, and also, again, not having to screw into the roof. That kind of just keeps everything in place. It's all adhesive down. That's actually roof patch tape. And then I just zip tied along the edge of the little AC pop-up. There's some vents there, so I just use that as a place to just put a couple zip ties, keep everything in a little bundle. There's a little bit extra wire there in case I ever had to do anything. And that runs inside. So then from there, we'll show you what happened behind the power controller. Now, behind the Go Power cutout, you can use any other controller as well. I've seen guys using, I don't know, Zamp is maybe a different brand, and then of course Renogy I looked at. This one, I just figured the Go Power, it came with the panel on the roof and it's an expansion kit, so I can always add another Go Power panel. They all just tie in together and works well. So the only other piece I didn't use that was Go Power is the actual AC inverter, which I did go with Renogy. I just liked the price on it for what it was and had good reviews. So behind this, there was a big loop of extra wire, but it was brown and yellow, which to me was confusing because on the roof, everything is red and black. Those are your hot and neutrals, or your DC leads. So I had to try it a couple times, but I got it figured out. It's basically like a 50-50 chance, and I got it wrong the first time, of course. But then once you get it right, you can see right now, battery's at 100%, 241 amp hours it's been running, 13.2 volts, and it's saying it's getting 2.6 amps. It's actually getting more, but that's what the controller actually does. It throttles it down because the battery's at 100%. You just don't want to keep jamming it with amps when it's basically full. So up here, that means we're in good full sunlight. Sometimes it's a moon when it's at night. You can do a max boost. And then if I did use the wired in Go Power AC inverter, there's a switch here. But the Renogy kit has its own controller switch, so that's what I'll show you that I mounted under the bed over there. Once I knew I had the power coming down from the panels into the controller, and then the lines out of the controller were into feeding the battery correctly, I hooked up the red and white battery power cables from the inverter, and you can see basically from here, those are hooked up to the leads on the battery, and then I drilled a hole through the kind of the front chassis. This is above my trailer tongue on the front, to feed those lines in so that I could have my inverter inside my underbed storage. It's like a little pass-through storage that goes under the bed. And hard to see, but the wires are all expansion foamed in, and then I put a little bit of waterproofing flashing, like a rubber membrane over it to shed water. That's where those wires come in from behind the trailer tongue and the battery box, and then it feeds into the inverter. So I have a Go Power solar system, but I opted to get a Renogy inverter, just for whatever reason. Basically the pricing for what I got this for as opposed to the Go Power one. I got a 2000 watt pure sine wave inverter. And then the next thing I'll show you is the power cords that I hooked up. This phone line is the remote, so the remote is in front of the bunk, and then I have an outlet that's hardwired into this, and I'll show you where that came from. Under the bunk, I drilled with a hole saw, so a pass through. So from the actual cabin of the trailer underneath the bunk flips up as storage. I drilled that hole and passed these wires through, and then now I'm hooking them up to an outlet so I can plug the outlet in, and basically it becomes just like an extension cord. It's just sort of permanently plugged in and wired to a ground fault outlet that I'll show you that I screwed it into the front of the bunks. So there's the last plug I hooked up. I put a couple little plastic harnesses just to keep the wires bundled up along these little mini rafters and up out of the way. And they feed into the bunk, and then from that side I will go in and start hooking up the outlet. You can see I have the inverter switch to remote, and then this phone looking line is what actually controls the remote. And there's a little controller at the end of our bunk, so we can basically turn on and off the inverter from inside without having to come under here. Now we are inside the RV under the bunk. The bunk tilts up. You'll see there's a little hydraulic jack over here, so you can tilt the bunk up, and then you have all this storage under here. So we use that as a good area to feed through all the wires. I just bundled up the extra control wire and just kind of tacked it along the edge here and hooked it up to an outlet, and then that's the remote for the inverter. And then if you're on the front of the bunk inside the cabin here, a little bit dark, but that's your controller you switch on and off. That will turn the inverter on. And then I got 2 GFI outlets. I got it with the USB, so we can just plug our phones in and charge them at night. And yeah, that's what the finished side looks like. And then I will be finishing off this one on this side. So then there's one close to the end of each side of the bed, and then also if you're sitting at the dining room table, you'll also be able to just plug a computer in from there, run it across, and you'll be sitting there working or whatever. You can just barely make out where I roughed out the edges of where I want my outlet to go so that they're both equal height from the floor, from the exterior. So then I'm going to cut based off tracing those lines with my multi-tool. And coming in the front door, you've got the whole little galley here. That'll be the pop-out dinette with a table that comes down, so that whole thing backs out, so you have a nice lane to walk to and from. The little kitchenette, little bureau storage, and then the bed. So the bed tilts up, and then half of the underbed is storage, interior storage. The other half is the back half that's basically the exterior pass-through storage. So you can see one little white outlet. That was the one I just installed. And then let's get over here. You got the Renogy AC inverter controller and the other outlet. So these outlets are basically just dead until I go ahead and turn that on. Pop, that goes good. And then see the GFI green. So I decided to use a GFI outlet with 2 standard USB, so we can plug some phones and some speakers, things like that, to charge in. And then on this side, I decided to go with the plug that also has the USB-C, since a lot of the newer stuff like iPads and just other newer Apple devices use the USB-C plug-in, which is just like the smaller USB. So now we have 2 live outlets that were wired under. So you got the outlet junction box, we got it all stapled against the framing, controller and the other outlet, and it just funnels through, and then that's going to go into the exterior pass-through storage. Then just to pull the whole video together, yeah, the wires come back into the exterior pass-through storage, and you can see they're both plugged in. I've got the AC inverter switch on remote so that I can always turn it on from inside the cabin. So this just stays on remote out here, then I can operate it from inside. This one, it's cool. It does also have a USB plug. So if you're just operating directly off this, you got a USB on there. You've got 3 outlets. So there's one exterior outlet where if I was doing something and I wanted to run an extension cord out from here, I still have another outlet available, and I'm stoked to use it. We're going to be at San Elijo in Cardiff, San Diego this weekend for Labor Day, so I'll show you another video once we got everything, some things plugged in and we're running it. We got his little fan, his noise machine, some of our computers plugged in, a big fan for the bed. One of the few rainy days in San Diego. Solar and the AC inverter were a success. This little guy got to have his fans and bottle warmer plugged in all night. Super comfortable. We woke up, there was still 65% on the battery. Plugged in all our phones and computers. Killer, super convenient.